And we're going to continue with this, the 8th chapter of The Revenge of the Wizard's Ghost. Fergie and Johnny got turned around by the fog and ended up in the main mansion of the Windrow estate, not the church where they wanted to be, and the professor decided that they would check out the library. Fergie quickly flashed his light down the long... Whoops. "Hey!" exclaimed Fergie. "Do you think that's a smart thing to do? What if somebody drives by and sees the lights on?" "They will think that the workmen are putting in some overtime," said the professor calmly. "Now quit griping and have a look around. We're not going to stay long." They were in a huge, high-ceilinged room that would have reminded Fergie of his high school gym, except that built-in bookcases stretched from floor to ceiling along 3 of the 4 walls, and a narrow balcony ran all the way around the room, so you could get at the shelves that were higher up. The shelves were empty, and tall stacks of books were standing on the floor. As he paused to run his fingers over the dusty cover of a book, he heard a loud whap behind him. "Ye gods!" exclaimed the professor as he whirled around. "Don't do that! You nearly gave me a heart attack!" "I didn't do it," muttered Fergie, and he turned to see what had made the noise. A book had fallen off one of the piles. Curious, Fergie ambled over and picked it up. It was a small square book, bound in watered blue silk. The gold letters on the spine said, "Budge's Heraldry." Fergie flipped the cover back, and on the flyleaf he saw a name and a date. Zebulon Windrow, July 5th, 1897. "Hey, Professor!" Fergie said loudly. "This is a book about heraldry, and it used to belong to Zebulon Windrow. You know, the old nutcase that built this place?" "Well, isn't that charming?" said the professor sourly. "Bring the book along. You can read yourself to sleep with it when we get back to the hotel tonight. Come on, as you can see, there is a large window at the far end of the room, but it's as black as pitch. I had forgotten that you need sunlight or moonlight to see the details. Stupid of me, eh? Let's get going." Fergie tucked the book under his arm and moved toward the door. He watched as the professor flicked the switch and the room was plunged into darkness again. But just as they were about to turn on their flashlights, something happened. A faint glow of moonlight suddenly spread over the window, and it revealed the picture of a young man in an old-fashioned uniform with a double row of buttons and fringed epaulettes. He had a cocked hat under his arm, and he looked very stiff and pompous. Around the picture was a wide oval border, and in the border was an inscription, "Ensign French is the unfortunate traveler." The picture glowed for only a few seconds, and then it went dark. "Humph!" said the professor, as he snapped his flashlight on. "If that doesn't just beat everything. You know, Byron, while you were looking into that heraldry book, I was leafing through a couple of books on one stack. Both were copies of The Unfortunate Traveler, a book by an old writer named Thomas Nash. So you see, there really is a pattern of UT clues to the Urim and the Thummim. It is not just a lot of folderol invented by Charlie Coote and me." Silently, Fergie added that UT might stand for ugly twerp, but he didn't argue. He turned on his light and followed the professor out the door. A stiff wind was blowing, and the fog was starting to break up. Tattered shreds of mist swirled around the church's pinnacles and tall steeple. Fergie and the professor left the driveway and padded across the wet grass toward the small stone porch that was stuck into one side of the church. Inside the porch they found a large wooden door with a twisted ring of wrought iron hanging from it. "This one's got to be locked," thought Fergie. But when the professor twisted the ring to the right, a hidden latch clicked and the door swung inward. For a couple of seconds the professor paused with his hand on the iron ring. Fergie heard him muttering, and he thought he was saying a prayer. Then the old man gave the door a hard shove, and they went inside. And that's the end of Chapter 8.